Walt never stopped working on his park from its opening in 1955 to his passing in 1966. He was not one to rest on his laurels and stayed involved with planning and attraction details right up through Pirates of the Caribbean and New Tomorrowland. The impact he made during those 11 years shaped not just Disneyland itself, but every Disney park as we know them today. So what do you say we take a tour around Disneyland together and see if we can find Walt Disney's Disneyland? Welcome back to the Blue Sky Vid-Cast, where the magic and history of Disneyland meet your imagination. I'm your host Don Morin, and along with many other topics, this will be the first of a 3-part video tour of Walt Disney's original park. So don't miss the rest of this series. Like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you know when new videos are released. Also, be sure to leave a comment. We would love to hear what your favorite memories are of Walt Disney's Disneyland. Now fasten your buckle, pull on that yellow tab, and let's enjoy the ride. As we walk through the main gates, you can see they're pretty much the same as they were in Walt's day, even though another park grew up in the old parking lot across the Esplanade. And Walt would occasionally greet park guests just inside the front gate. Like in the film Saving Mr. Banks, cars with VIP guests used to pull right up through those gates. These days, Disneyland has more discreet entrances for VIP celebrity guests. After you get through the gate, pause and look up at the Floral Mickey. You still get the same view Walt had as he came into his park. As you can see in these two photographs, even the trees are the same, just bigger. The Floral Mickey was part of the design of Disneyland since day one. This botanical and ornamental arrangement is a permanent fixture that changes with the seasons and holidays. As we enter the park, you can see Walt's small private apartment on the second floor of the firehouse, which still exists to this day. Lillian Disney herself helped create the Victorian design, keeping with the general theme of Main Street, USA. Walt would often entertain his family and guests there, and whenever he visited the park, a lamp was lit to let all the employees know he was there. The firehouse apartment was complete with a fire pole for a quick exit to the first floor, although it was sealed up as young guests would sometimes climb up that pole. The Disney family continued to use the apartment for 10 years after Walt's passing, but lost the privilege when his son-in-law Ron Miller was ousted from the company. According to Lillian, the company did not even allow her to reclaim her possessions, and she had to ask a custodian to smuggle them out for her. While many of the appointments are now copies, the apartment has been recreated in its exact authentic style. Today it functions as a museum piece, and tour guides show the apartment to special guests. The apartment light is still lit every night in remembrance of Walt Disney and his amazing vision. Once the animation studio was successful and operating smoothly, Walt turned his passion to scale model railroading. He famously built the 1/8 scale Carolwood Pacific Railroad in the backyard of his Holmby Hills home. And it wasn't just Walt. Disney Studios animator Ward Kimball also had a railroad in his backyard the same size as Disneyland's. WED, which would become Walt Disney Imagineering, constructed 2 scale engines from scratch to operate on a narrow gauge track encircling the park with stations at Main Street and Frontierland. Walt loved the Disneyland Railroad for several reasons. First of all, it was the very first functioning attraction at the park. Disneyland was a huge financial risk for Walt, and workers noted that he would come to the construction site and worry that even though he had already spent half of his budget, not one thing worked. The completion of the railroad must have felt like a huge achievement for Walt, and riding it for the first time while imagining what was about to come, it just gives me goosebumps. Keep an eye out for a future video on the Disneyland Railroad that will explore the secrets of the line, train cars, and each individual station. Shameless plug, hit the subscribe button now. Let's grab a bite down at the end of Main Street at the Plaza Inn. When the park first opened, there was a different restaurant here called the Red Wagon Inn. However, Walt, along with Imagineer John Hench, redesigned it into the Plaza Inn as we know it today. The Plaza Inn offers one of Walt's favorite dinners, fried chicken with vegetables and mashed potatoes. This delicious meal used to be served over at the Swift Chicken Plantation in Frontierland, a now-defunct restaurant located where New Orleans Square is today. Disneyland has always offered a chicken dinner to compete with Knott's Berry Farm down the road. Mrs. Knott's chicken dinners were famous, and Walt was quite fond of them. I'm really excited for another ride, so let's get going. But hold on, wait, we really should stop for a moment to take a look at one of Walt's best ideas, the hub. The hub and spoke design, borrowed from Paris, serves several purposes. It is meant to be a threshold between worlds, at once real and magical, combining the past, the present, and the future. In Walt's day, the four lands did not have direct connections and were only accessible via the hub. Frontierland seemed to go off into the wilderness rather than connect to the backside of Fantasyland. Parents and grandparents could send a child off into Fantasyland and wait for them at the hub, where Walt made sure lots of benches were available. We should also take a moment at the partner statue of Walt holding Mickey's hand and remember that it all started with a simple, honest mouse. Now, let's head into Adventureland for a ride down the rivers of the world on one of Walt's most ambitious opening day projects, the Jungle Cruise. The original ride was more serious, but has become a funny, tongue-in-cheek experience, combining gorgeous live jungle plants, campy electronics, and, bad jokes. Walt was very involved with the development of this classic ride, which, by the way, is still the standard for sightlines, spatial reveals, and repeatability. One day, Walt came and rode the ride 7 times in a row, each time with different skippers, noting the different ride lengths on each one, only to return the next day with copious notes on how to achieve consistency with each voyage. Walt's work with this ride is credited in the influence of Disney's reputable customer service methods. I love the Jungle Cruise. But now, let's circle back to Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room. It was originally conceived as a restaurant, but they were so excited with their creation, they thought it could stand on its own and open the first audio animatronic show. Early on, there was concern that audiences might need some enticement to get them inside the door, so Jose used to live outside in front of the lanai, inviting guests to the show. Unfortunately, it worked too well and caused huge traffic jams as people stopped and stared, so Jose was moved into the Tiki Room with all the other birds. During Walt's lifetime, the Tiki Room was sponsored by United Airlines and did not pass into Dole's hands until 1976, so he never got to enjoy a Dole Whip on the lanai. But that shouldn't stop you. Several of the birds were voiced by Walt's friends and favorite performers. For example, Jose is voiced by Wally Bogue, who was the lead actor in the Golden Horseshoe Revue for many years, and Tony the Tiger himself, Thurl Ravenscroft, brings Fritz to life. Did you know there was a huge computer control room directly under your feet that housed the enormous computers and magnetic disc controls that ran the original version of the show? Over the years, almost everything has been replaced or refurbished, but always in the spirit of the original creation. Today's version of the show has much better audio than Walt's original, which, by the way, was 4 minutes longer than the current show. We are happy to report that after 50 years of Jose asking, "What happened to Rosita?" she finally arrived last year at the Tropical Hideaway. If you're standing in front of Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room, take a look at the building. That's right, it's the same building as the Jolly Holiday Bakery. In fact, from opening day, the Pavilion restaurant offered a dual theme that delivered a Victorian and Polynesian experience. You would enter on the Main Street Victorian side and exit on the Polynesian side into Adventureland. Walt was never satisfied with this concept and was thrilled to replace it with his Enchanted Tiki Room in 1963. Now let's head towards New Orleans Square with a quick stop to walk through Tarzan's Treehouse. In 1962, this attraction opened as the Swiss Family Robinson Treehouse. Walt was extremely proud of the movie this attraction was based on. Live-action films were still fairly new to the studio, and it was shot on location in Tobago at tremendous expense. The 1960 film was a smash hit, and Walt thought it was perfect for Adventureland. We can climb up the Disneydendron Semperflorens Grandis, or Grand Ever-Blooming Disney Tree, and check out the feat of Imagineering in its branches. As you look at the thousands of applied leaves, imagine them red, as they originally were until 1964, when they were replaced with green leaves because the California sun caused the red ones to fade. The tree is made of concrete, steel, and plaster. Its 90-foot wide branches hold 3 rooms, originally the kids' room, the parents' room, and the family room. Currently, the rooms are themed to the Tarzan story, but the ship's wheel from the movie remains. Listen to the old Victrola. It's playing the Swiss polka that the Robinson family danced to that Christmas in the jungle so long ago. And speaking of trees, Adventureland holds one of the oldest and tallest trees in the park. Walt honored the wishes of the original owners of the land and saved an old date palm, which stands next to the Jungle Cruise queue, still strong and mighty today at 118 years old. It is not the oldest tree in Disneyland, though. That honor belongs to a 2-foot-tall pine tree that is over 150 years old. This makes me think I need to do a video on the trees of Disneyland. There's so many cool ones. When the park was created, many now famous trees were salvaged from all over Southern California to create the many green spaces we all continue to enjoy to this day. Shameless plug number 2. Like and subscribe. We've got some great stories yet to come. Let's stroll into New Orleans Square for a ride on Pirates of the Caribbean. Caribbean? I don't know. As you head under the bridge into Lafitte's Landing, you are entering the last ride that Walt Disney ever worked on. Actually, he started working on it in the 1950s and originally planned the attraction as a walk-through wax museum. But after It's a Small World's success at the 1964 World's Fair, the plans were changed to a boat ride. As you float by the Blue Bayou, take in another of Walt's visions, a high-quality themed restaurant that was a forerunner and model for its industry. And delicious. Pirates also set standards on what a theme park attraction could achieve. Walt was so concerned with the details of this ride that he even had a special rig built so he could continue to view the show scenes even in the final stages of his illness. He worked for years on the attraction but was never able to take a ride with the public himself. As we stroll around the shops and courtyards of New Orleans Square, be sure to take in Walt's vision of the city, set in the late 1800s to fit seamlessly into Frontierland, and remains ever popular to this day. Walt wanted to build another, larger and more impressive apartment for his family and to entertain his guests. It was completed years later as the very popular Disney Gallery and eventually became what is now known as the Dream Suite. In many ways, Walt was a complex man. He built a place like Disneyland to bring average families together, while at the same time creating some of the most exclusive spaces in the country. Club 33 is quite intentionally easy to miss for the average park guest with its unassuming door and entrance. The service, food, and overall experience remains a fantastic combination of exquisite French appointments combined with Disney details. Let's stroll out of the French Quarter over to the Garden District and visit the Haunted Mansion. Which, by the way, did not actually open until several years after Walt's passing, but his influence is undeniable. The idea for a haunted house attraction precedes the park itself, and the mansion facade was actually built in Walt's lifetime. It sat vacant for several years with only a single sign in front, inviting ghosts to relocate to Disneyland. Walt was heavy on the minds of the Imagineers as they completed this project in 1969. They pulled off one of the most classic and timeless rides in the park, combining the vision and work of Walt and his top Imagineers. As we come to the end of this portion of our tour, and we begin to look away from the Haunted Mansion, you can see the Wild West in the distance and imagine the fantasy that lies beyond. This part of the park, right between Frontierland and New Orleans Square, is one of the most magical places to spend an evening at Disneyland. Well, that's it for today. I'm Don Morin, your host for the Blue Sky Vid-Cast, and thanks for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the Blue Sky Vid-Cast, where the magic and history of Disneyland meet your imagination. It's been a fun tour so far, and there's so much more to see. So don't forget to click the bell for notifications. What are you hoping to see? Leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, please return your 3D glasses as you exit. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.